The image here is by Sidney William Carline, and it's from a series of paintings that he did on the RAF in the Middle East and in Palestine. There's many of them in Palestine during the First World War, depicting aircraft in various dogfights or in air bases landing in different areas of the country. And they're very beautiful watercolors, and they depict this aerial view from above, this British omniscient idea of the role of the aircraft in the Middle East, and how they depict Palestine as well. So we know from actual maps and surveys conducted that there were population centers in and around the Sea of Galilee, but they're not depicted in this image. Instead, we have the aircraft at the center hovering over the land and surveying the land and being the dominant focal point in the image itself. And this series of paintings, this aesthetic, this aerial aesthetic, was part of a wider genealogy of viewing Palestine from above, which stretches back to the 19th century with the first mapping exercises done by the Palestine Explorative Fund in the 1870s, and they mapped the entirety of the country and focused on the biblical sites. And there's plenty of good literature that looks at the role of the PEF in mapping Palestine and how that fed into conceptions of Palestine as this holy land for the British. And then during the First World War, if you look at the way in which Palestine's imagined by officials, it's very much through this lens of it being this sacred and holy land, an important place for the British, both religiously and symbolically. So these post-war paintings build on this idea of the British adopting this cartographical view from above, looking down at the land and surveying it. But we see a shift in the post-war years as the British move from viewing Palestine through their photography, through their mapping, and through their paintings, primarily as a holy land, to one in which can be scientifically approached, can be measured, and its people can be understood and surveyed. So there's a type of governmentality that's going on there. And I think these paintings are symbols of this switch. They're not depicting the Holy Land per se, but they are focusing on this scientific object of the aircraft and putting it at the center of the painting. And they're also ignoring the Ottoman past of Palestine. In these paintings, you don't see really any traces of the Ottoman past. It's very much the natural environment with this British scientific object, the aircraft itself.
It's also like, you can see these images are always like performing for the imagined Orientalist gaze, no? Like the imagined Orientalist gaze in relation to Palestine or Iraq is that like, these are all like old, very significant biblical in the case of Palestine, and in the case of Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization. So those places are now discovered and brought it to civilizational level by British technology and science. So it's working sort of like in a double way. One is that like they are serving for the imagined Orientalist gaze, and the second is they're serving for the imagined hunger for the reproduction of the empire, right? In all these, scientific and technological progress. The liberal empire is just like thriving.
I think by presenting Palestine like this, in this image as empty or barren, they're also presenting a developmental image of Palestine and the role that British technology and development can play in the land, that there's all this bountiful, green, beautiful, empty space, ready for the British to come in with their aircraft and their other technologies to develop. And that you definitely see that in the archive, in the way in which Palestine and Mesopotamia as well are spoken about in the post-war years as these spaces that have this potential for development, and the British are going to be the ones who lead this development.